2024, and no dumbest bill in America, but we do have a go woke or go broke. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and the Millennial joining me today is actually on the other side of the camera, and that's our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. So this podcast is called 2024, and we're referring to the very good possibility that the President of the United States, if he does not succeed, and we do want him to succeed in contesting all the fraud in this election, but if he does not succeed, he might go to 2024. So podcast listeners, get this. Donald Trump may announce a 2024 run during Biden's inauguration. So let's say that again. Trump may announce a 2024 run during Biden's actual inauguration. So Trump is actually intimating that he might do this in the Daily Beast. It's an online newspaper. They have the following. Trump's already gaming out a 2024 run, including an event during Biden's inauguration. And it states as follows. In the twilight of his presidency, obviously the Daily Beast is not in any way, shape, or form fair and balanced, but I want to read this nonetheless so you can get a flavor of what they wrote. In the twilight of his presidency, Donald Trump is discussing different ways to disrupt the impending Joe Biden era, chief among them by announcing another run against him. According to three people familiar with the conversations, the president, who refuses to acknowledge he lost the 2020 election, as he clearly did, has not just talked to close advisors and confidants about a potential 2024 run to reclaim the White House, but about the specifics of a campaign launch. The conversations have explored, among other things, how Trump could best time his announcement so as to keep the Republican Party behind him for the next 4 years. Two of these knowledgeable sources said the president has, in the past 2 weeks, even floated the idea of doing a 2024 related event during Biden's inauguration week, possibly on Inauguration Day, if Trump's legal effort to steal the 2020 election ultimately fails. Can you believe that? So that's a Daily Beast saying that if Trump's legal effort to steal the 2020 election fails, then Trump might actually have an event the day of Biden's inauguration whereby Trump announces that he is starting his campaign to run for president of the United States against Joe Biden or against Kamala Harris, whomever obviously is still around, in 4 years. I actually think this is brilliant. And the reason I think this is brilliant is because of the simple fact that Donald Trump could draw a huge crowd in Washington, D.C. I mean, why not when you think about it? Why not Washington, D.C.? Or maybe if not Washington, D.C., on the day of the inauguration when Trump is supposed to hop in the helicopter and symbolically fly away from the White House as you have the peaceful transfer of power and Joe Biden is inaugurated. Why would Trump even show up at the inauguration? Why not have another event in D.C.? If not D.C., because maybe, the park police won't allow that because there would potentially be too many people who have opposing views and might create, obviously, some issues. Fine. Then why not in Pennsylvania? Why not in Pennsylvania? The same state that Joe Biden has clearly stolen through fraudulent activity. Look, everybody knows it. Everybody knows in Philadelphia that these vote dumps where people only voted for one person in a ballot with a dozen or more people running for different kinds of elections, it was just phony. It was fake. It was fraud. It was stolen. That's my opinion. I do believe that. But why not then have Donald Trump on January 20th announce in Pennsylvania with probably hundreds of thousands of people, probably more people at Donald Trump's event than people that would actually attend Joe Biden's event. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Ooh, what a fantastic idea. And so I would love to see this. And of course, the Daily Beast, naturally, they have their spin. Let them have their spin however they want it. So get this, podcast listeners, The Spectator talking about Donald Trump and this election and what Donald Trump might do if he does not succeed in the Electoral College. The Spectator, another online paper, says there are reasons why the 2020 presidential election is deeply puzzling And The Spectator goes on to explain in great detail. If you get a chance, you should really read this article. It is truly spectacular. It's in The Spectator, and it really lays out all of the reasons why it just doesn't make sense. And let me just give you kind of one of the tail end examples that The Spectator wrote about. If you notice in the media, there are still Republican races that are being called for the United States House of Representatives. One race was just called in Iowa, another race, where the Republican defeated the Democrat by, get this, podcast listeners, 6 votes. 6 votes. Can you imagine winning by 6 votes in a district that has 750,000 people? I mean, it's unbelievable. So these races are still being counted because they're so close, and they're still being called. And so The Spectator talks about that. It's like, well, wait a minute. One race after another is falling on the Republican side in the House of Representatives, which is the House that is closest to the people. So how is it possible then that the President of the United States has overperformed in all of these counties across the country, including many purple counties, and Biden has underperformed in those same counties? Whereas, 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton did much better than Biden. And yet, in just the key cities, just those perfect locations in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Milwaukee, in Las Vegas, and in Atlanta, how is it possible that in just those 5 cities, Joe Biden didn't just overperform, but he performed to such a great extent that we had 70, 80% of the population voting, and in some cases, we had more than 100% of the population voting, which, how do you have more than 100% of the people voting? I don't know, right? I mean, if you're an honest judge and you look at this, you have to at least ask the question and say, you know what? We need to suspend certification, state certification of the election until we explain how it is that that is possible. So nonetheless, that's in The Spectator. And I just think it's hysterical that in 2024, Donald Trump may decide to announce that he's running for president again on the very same day that Joseph Biden is inaugurated. What a great idea. So next up, podcast listeners, former President Barack Obama attacks Trump voters. So you got to hear this. Former President Barack Obama attacks Trump voters. And boy, does he attack them. No one can say things smoother than Barack Obama. I have to give him that, right? Because Barack Obama, he is a master at crafting language so that it doesn't really seem offensive. It actually seems really kind of reasonable because of the way he says it, the manner in which he says it. But nonetheless, you have to really listen clearly to understand what Barack Obama is saying and actually what he's trying to accomplish. And with this, Barack Obama goes on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and we have a bunch of clips from this, and Obama goes right into it and starts to attack Trump voters and does nothing more than, look, he did the exact same thing in this interview that he did in his 8 years as president, which is race bait. And I'm sorry, I find it fascinating that many of my black friends across the aisle, and I have many, by the way, many very good friends across the aisle who are Democrats and who are black, and we get along great, we do, on a social level. On a political level, we are polar opposites. And they think Barack Obama is fantastic, and I always ask them about his policies and about how he race-baited during those 8 years. It's exactly what he did during this interview. This interview with Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club, which is a very well listened to, highly listened to show on YouTube and on other channels as well. Obama goes on there and talks about, of course, Obama's book. So Obama's latest book is called A Promised Land, and Obama proceeds to talk about Donald Trump didn't keep Americans safe. Donald Trump didn't keep Americans safe. I presume he's talking about the pandemic. I'm not really sure. But you got to listen to this really carefully. You have to listen to all these clips really carefully. During this interview, where Obama very carefully crafts and attacks voters, including white voters and Trump voters. We have the first clip, and here it is.
Question, though, is that you still had 70 million people voting for a government that I would say objectively has failed. miserably in handling just basic looking after the American people and keeping them safe.
So just basic looking after the American people and keeping them safe. Donald Trump says that Donald Trump just couldn't do the basic thing, which of course, this is Barack Obama with obviously a great deal of jealousy of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump created, without question, the most significant and vibrant economy the world has ever seen. And it was right here in the United States of America, and then the pandemic hit, right? So imagine being the president. You have to completely pivot, and you go from great economy, incomes are increasing. So incomes are increasing, especially of the middle class, and that includes the lower middle class, not just the middle class. Incomes are increasing, and then the pandemic starts and just wreaks havoc on people's personal lives and their economic lives as well. So that doesn't matter to Obama, of course, because he has to, take these gratuitous shots against Donald Trump. So I have a second clip of Obama on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and Obama says Trump voters are misinformed by stories. You won't believe this clip, and we're going to talk about this at more length. Here is the clip.
It turns out politics is not just about policy. It's not just about numbers. It's about the stories that are being told. And the story that they're hearing from Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and, in some cases inside their churches, is that, Democrats, don't believe in Christmas and, only care about minorities and black folks and are trying to take your stuff and trying to take your guns away. And there's a whole story that's being told to them. And people end up feeling as if, we are under attack.
See, Obama delivers those sharp criticisms in such a reasonable way. But what does he say? That going to church, you're hearing things from your pastor or your priest or whomever, whatever church you go to, and they're doing what? They're attacking Democrats in church? No, they're not. No, they're not. This is Barack Obama hating religion. Without question, this man does not like religion. We all knew it during the 8 years, and here he is, he's reintroducing it again as he talks about his book and his attack on Trump voters and his attack on Donald Trump himself. And then he even goes on, to say that people are misinformed because they're hearing stories. They're hearing stories about how Republicans, and Democrats Democrats are only for black folk. That's what he said. Once again, he's race baiting. I've never heard of Republicans say that. Never. Never. But this is the race baiting Barack Obama that we had to put up with for 8 years, who promised us hope and change. And all we got from him was more division so deep that Donald Trump gets elected and tries to bring us together through economics, right? Through economic growth. And I do still believe that is one of the key ways, it's not the only way, but it's one of the key ways that we bring people together. We bring people into and buying into the American dream, namely that they are doing better and that they have an opportunity and that they are realizing that opportunity by having a better life than their parents. But nonetheless, there's good old Barack Obama. Once again, he's attacking white voters, he's attacking Republicans, he's attacking the church. I mean, he's attacking all of the institutions that Americans hold dear, and he's once again trying to separate people. But it all sounds so reasonable when you're Barack Obama because he says it in such a soothing and calm way. He looks so, like he doesn't look like he's any way intimidating or threatening when he says it. But believe me, this man is incredibly dangerous. So here we have Barack Obama with another clip talking about how white voters and white Trump voters especially, you got to hear this one to believe it. Here's the clip.
You've seen created in Republican politics this sense that white males are victims, like they're the ones who are like under attack, which obviously doesn't jibe with both history and data and economics. But that's a sincere belief. That's been internalized. That's a story that's being told, and how you unwind that is going to be not something that is done right away. It's going to take some time.
And that's racist. I'm sorry. Barack Obama, that is a racist comment, what you just said. Because the fact of the matter is that voters in the small towns throughout the heartland of this country believe that the globalists on the Republican side and the globalists on the Democrat side have sold them out, have sold out the working men and women, and have moved factories and allowed these factories to be exported to China and other Asian countries where things can be made much cheaper. And what happens? These towns have been hollowed out. No jobs, no factories, no manufacturing. We just found that out with the pandemic, right? We found out that as a result of a pandemic, we found out that we don't even make the stuff that we need. We don't make the pharmaceuticals here. We don't make the personal protective equipment here, you know, like the face masks. We don't make any of those things. And we don't make the syringes here. I mean, how stupid are we to allow this to happen? And Obama tries to separate people in these towns in the Midwest and throughout Middle America by race, right? He's trying to separate them by race, saying, well, it's those white voters who think they're the victims, so they vote for a white guy. And it totally misses the point, because guess who also lives in these towns and these cities in the heartland of America? People who are also black, right? They've also lost their jobs. They've also lost these factories. They've also lost opportunity. They also are realizing despair. The same thing is happening to those people. So that's Obama attacks Trump voters. So next up, we have Obama wants to eliminate the Electoral College. You can't believe this, right? Obama wants to eliminate the Electoral College, podcast listeners. You can't believe it. He's on Charlemagne the God. And Charlemagne the God, of course, has his own show called The Breakfast Club. And Barack Obama is on that show promoting his book. His book's called A Promised Land, I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, it's called A Promised Land. And Barack Obama says unequivocally to Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club, we need to get rid of the Electoral College. I can't believe this. We have the clip, and here it is.
So I wonder how different would the Dem strategy be if we lived in a one-man, one-vote society with no Electoral College?
Oh, I think that would help. I mean, look, let's take a simple example like the Senate. So Wyoming, which has about 500,000 people, has the same number of senators as California with 33 million people, right? Mm-hmm. So what that means is that the U.S. Senate basically is hugely skewed towards some of these lower population, more rural, much wider states than the big coastal states.
So that's Obama saying he wants to get rid of the Electoral College, and in the same sentence, he wants to get rid of 2 senators per state, and in the same sentence, saying he wants to eliminate federalism, which, states' rights. So why would he say that? Why would he say that? Because he's trying to sell the notion to the black community and to Charlemagne the God, who has millions of listeners, by the way. Obama's trying to sell the notion that one man, one vote only exists if you get rid of the Electoral College. All right? So he's trying to sell the idea that it only applies to black people. The Electoral College disproportionately hurts black people. It's nonsense. We have a lady who is nominated, a woman who is nominated Vice President of the United States by Joe Biden. We don't know if she's actually going to succeed or not. I hope she doesn't. Just like, quite frankly, I didn't want Obama to succeed because I believe he is a Marxist. And now, with this interview, he has proven that he is a socialist, and I believe Barack Obama. I believed it in my heart from the very first day. And I was always so disappointed that America's first black president was a Marxist. But now he's coming out, right? He's coming out and he's showing his true colors, because he's saying, well, why should there be 2 United States senators representing Wyoming with 500,000 people, but California, which has tens of millions of people, should also have only 2 United States senators? Well, I'll tell you why. It's very simple. Because if we allow the people of California to dictate all of the policies in the state of Wyoming, you know what happens? The people in Wyoming no longer have any control or say over what happens in their state. Everybody in California will tell them what to do. Everybody in California will dictate their forest policies, right? The same forest policies that have resulted in millions of acres burning in California because of their poor forestry management. The same California will tell them that they have to cover every square inch of Wyoming with solar panels. A beautiful state. Well, let's cover it up anyway with solar panels because, you know, that's the woke thing to do. And the people of Wyoming probably wouldn't want that. The same people in California are going to tell the people of Wyoming, you know what? We need to have not just land preservation, but land preservation to the extreme, and we want to tell you how to do that, so we want to depopulate Wyoming so that we can just have it as one big park. You can just go down the list of how you would have the tyranny of the majority without question. And the Founding Fathers talked about this, and Barack Obama knows it. But how's he selling getting rid of the Electoral College? He's selling it as he's selling it through race baiting. He's telling Charlemagne the God and Charlemagne the God's millions of users, millions of watchers, excuse me, who happen to be primarily black. He's convincing them and trying to convince them that the Electoral College is racist and the Electoral College doesn't allow there to be one man, one vote. And he's only focusing on that. And he's only focusing on that and not saying, oh yeah, oh by the way, well, the people in the United States who are white and Asian and Hispanic also live under the same rules of the Electoral College. And the other great thing about the Electoral College is if you don't like living in the state of California where tens of thousands of people can't wait to leave and are trying to leave, you can move somewhere else that is more, I don't know, palatable. But if we had a national popular vote for president and for all things, without question, we would have the tyranny of the majority. We would have the majority dictating the most extreme, crazy policies you can imagine. And here's one great example. Who wouldn't in these cities, especially after the theft of this election of 5 major American cities, who wouldn't in those cities vote to give themselves free health care, free college, free, just go down the list? Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? And that is why we are a republic. We are a republic to stop that majority tyranny and to stop that craziness, because that's what happens. And we know that's what happens, but Barack Obama wants that because that is the road to socialism, right? You get the road to socialism by having direct democracy where people can start voting to take away much easier what you've worked for and what you have. And that is that's why I've said from the day that man was elected, and I caught a lot of heat for this too, but since the day that man was elected, I said that Barack Obama was a Marxist. So here's Barack Obama's thoughts on controlling the United States Senate moving forward. Of course, it's all about Georgia, we know that. But Obama doesn't even want there to be a United States Senate because he doesn't believe that every state should have 2 senators. He expands upon that. We have that clip, and here it is.
You know, one of the things that is still at stake at Georgia is if we controlled the Senate, then it is at least theoretically possible to pass a voting rights bill that stops some of this voter suppression and intimidation that you're still seeing around the country. And that Republicans have been pretty blatant about just saying, look, we're trying to prevent them from voting.
Can you believe this? Once again, you wonder why we have a country that is so divided, right? One of the reasons our country is so divided, and it's a key reason, it's not the only reason, but it is a key reason, and that is the 8 years of Barack Obama, who repeats these lies again and again. He's basically saying that Republicans are engaging in voter suppression nationwide. Well, let's just say, for example, that in the inner city of Philadelphia, that you have more than 100% of the population voting, and we have ballots that aren't signed, aren't dated, aren't postmarked. We know what happened there, right? This has nothing to do with color. This has to do with simple, straightforward, common sense in the way we should be voting, which is show up in person, show an ID, and vote in person. That solves all these problems, as we said ad nauseum on this podcast. If you can go to Home Depot, if you can go to Office Depot, and if you can go to Walmart, you can sure as heck go and stand in line and socially distance and wait your turn until you vote. But not according to Barack Obama. Barack Obama still has to play this game that the only reason why the Democrats can't get control is because the Constitution is standing in the way and because Republicans are the ones who are cheating. Really? Really? Republicans are cheating? So here's Obama talking about D.C. and Puerto Rico. Gee, I wonder why he's talking about those two places. I wonder why. Also, this is on Charlemagne the God, and here's that clip.
Getting to the Electoral College, getting to the way that the U.S. Senate is skewed, that would require us also potentially admitting Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico in as states, so that, which has its own politics. It would mean having states change how they do their electoral counts.
So once again, this is Barack Obama expanding on not just getting rid of the Electoral College, not just getting rid of the United States Senate and having 2 senators per state, but also admitting new states, D.C., which you can't admit because it's a federal city and it was once part of another state, which is unconstitutional, and Puerto Rico, which is just a hot mess, right? And it's always been a hot mess. And we already support Puerto Rico enormously. The United States taxpayers do. But why do you think Barack Obama wants those 2 places to be states? Because it's his way of trying to game the Electoral College. It's his way to trying to game the system and to be able to also eliminate having to amend the United States Constitution and just move forward and, get 2 new states in so that you're going to have 4 new far left United States senators so that they can implement their socialist Marxist agenda. I tell you, this guy, for the first time, once again, he sounds so reasonable when he talks, but for the first time, he's really opening up and showing you who he really is on Charlemagne the God. So here's Obama on amending the United States Constitution. Problem is, Obama says, it's just so hard to amend, We can't amend it and turn this place into a Marxist society the way we want to, as fast as we want to. We have that clip, and here it is.
Well, there is a way to change it. It's called amending the Constitution. The problem is that in order to do that, we have to have such an increase in awareness and activism. So there's a mechanism to amend the Constitution, but you just have to get everybody involved and focused.
So there's a mechanism to amend the Constitution. On this podcast, we've had the Convention of States folks, and they have explained one of the key ways to amend the Constitution, and that is to call a Convention of States, and they want to do so to be able to bring more discipline to the federal government, among other things. And we've had those folks, and they're fantastic folks, by the way, and I fully support them. But here's Obama basically saying, there are ways to amend the Constitution, but it's just hard. And you gotta talk to people about it. You have to inform them about it. It's like, so he's basically talking about his 8 years and how he really couldn't accomplish anything, because what he really wanted to accomplish, Barack Obama wanted to accomplish during his 8 years, was to fundamentally change and undermine the American system and turn it into a Marxist global system in brotherhood with China and, perhaps bring back the Soviet Union. I'm sure that would be like his dream, his ultimate dream. And it's just disgusting that he doesn't believe in the Constitution, because if he really did, he wouldn't be talking about eliminating the Electoral College. If he were really the scholar that he says he is, he wouldn't even suggest getting rid of the Electoral College, because that would create, without question, in my mind, a civil war. We would go to all-out civil war if the Electoral College was eliminated. And I also believe that if they took baby steps to get there as well, which is to eliminate the 2 senators per state rule, if you will, that would ultimately involve and result in eliminating the Electoral College as well as civil war. It's not what I want to see. It's not what the American people want to see. But Barack Obama He's trying to create a revolution from the top. And he doesn't want to do the work necessary, right? He doesn't want to do this. It's like, yeah, it's too hard to convince the American people to change the Constitution. So therefore, we're going to just try to do it from the top down. That is by bringing in Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., and also, just getting rid of the Electoral College by stacking the Supreme Court. We all know it. Everybody knows it. In fact, Victor David Hanson of the Hoover Institution, we did a whole podcast on him. He literally he's all over the media talking about this very issue. And boy, is he prescient. He's right on, Victor David Hanson, because he's literally saying it's not just the Democrat Party, it's the thought leaders, the people that are the most powerful people in the Democrat Party, namely Barack Obama, who want to fundamentally undermine the United States Constitution and change it forever. So next up, we have Barack Obama talking about eliminating the filibuster. That's also a big dream of the left. And he's also talking about this. Obama is on Charlemagne the God, I should say, on the Breakfast Club. I guess that's what it's called, right? I mean, what is that? Do you watch that at all? Yeah, I didn't think, I'm talking about Christopher because I figure like it's a younger millennial thing. But I think they have like 5 million people that subscribe to this channel. So it is well watched. Nonetheless, here's Barack Obama talking about, let's eliminate the filibuster. It's like a relic of, Jim Crow. We have that clip, and here it is.
You have to have 60 votes to pass legislation. You have to have a supermajority. Well, that even more empowers those little states, right? Because now they don't even need 50 Senate votes. They just need 41 to basically block anything from getting through the Senate. That's what happened to me in my first 2 years, was I was having to get to 60 votes on everything, which meant that the number of senators that were basically representing 25% of the country had a veto power over anything we wanted to try to get done.
That's Barack Obama talking about how ineffective he was during his 8 years, and he was incredibly ineffective because he refused to compromise. He refused to work with Mitch McConnell in the United States Senate to try to get things done. And that's fundamentally because Barack Obama doesn't believe in the United States Constitution. McConnell, to his credit, recognized that very early on and put the brakes on Barack Obama's crazy Marxist agenda, without question. And so what did he just say there? He said, we need to get rid of the Senate filibuster because you need 60 votes to end a debate. And if you can't, and that's just ridiculous. Why not? It should just be 51 votes. Well, here's why there are 60 votes, because let's go back to Wyoming, right? Wyoming, small state, rural, very open, very free. Well, the Democrats want to pass a $15 or $20 minimum wage. You know what? A $15 minimum wage may make sense in New York City. It may. It may make sense in Los Angeles, California. It may even make sense in Chicago, Illinois. I don't know if it does or it doesn't, because I don't live in those states, and there's a reason I don't live in those states. But does it make sense in Wyoming? Right? Do you think that the cost of living in Wyoming is as high as it is in Manhattan? Of course it's not. So what Obama wants to do is a one-size-fits-all, and the Senate filibuster stops that. Because the Senate filibuster is a recognition that every state is unique, and every state has unique objectives and has unique characteristics. And the people in that state are unique in certain ways as well. Why are they unique? Well, because Alaska, right? Have you ever met anybody that lives in Alaska? If you have, you would say, wow, man, I bet that's really wild and interesting, right? It's unique. It's a unique culture. It's a unique place. Same thing I'm sure exists in upstate New York, right? Or people who live in Manhattan. It's an entirely different lifestyle. It's a very different country with very different places and very different ways of living. But Obama doesn't want that. He wants, and so do the Democrats, they want a one-size-fits-all. And that is how Marxists derive their power, right? You must obey from the federal level down. That is antithetical to the United States Constitution. So next up, podcast listeners, we have Barack Obama attacks Hispanic Trump voters. Yes, Barack Obama attacks Hispanic Trump voters. I can't believe he actually does that, but yeah, he actually did. So we have a clip on this, and specifically Obama's talking about Hispanics who are evangelicals as well. In other words, they go to church. And we know that Barack Obama doesn't like people that go to church. We have a clip on that, and here it is.
People were surprised about a lot of Hispanic folks who voted for Trump. But there's a lot of evangelical Hispanics who, you know, the fact that Trump says racist things about Mexicans or puts detainees, undocumented workers in cages, they think that's less important than the fact that, you know, he supports their views on, you know, gay marriage or abortion, right?
Can you believe here is a guy who literally in that short clip insulted so many different people and did everything he could to drive a wedge between people based on identity politics. That's exactly what that was about. You know, if you're Hispanic, how can you vote for Donald Trump? It's just like Joe Biden. You ain't black unless you vote for a Democrat. Same nonsense, right? Why do you think Hispanics are increasingly moving to the Republican Party? Now, if you're a Democrat, you should worry about this. Well, there are a lot of reasons. You know what one of the main reasons is? One of the main reasons that Hispanics are moving to the Republican Party is because when they see that their lifestyle is improving and that their opportunities are expanding under a growing economy and that their wages are increasing, they realize that one party wants to see them and have them realize an opportunity to a better life. And the other party, namely Barack Obama's party, wants to divide them by their race and wants to race bait by saying, Donald Trump built cages at the border and he's putting people in the cages. We've talked about that before. We're not even going to talk about that this time because it's just more race baiting by Barack Obama. And then Obama even says the Hispanics who are evangelical, he can't believe that they vote for Republicans because, you know, church is bad. Why should you be religious? I mean, that is what the Democrats are absolutely terrified of. So podcast listeners, why do you think that wages increased under Donald Trump? Why have wages increased across the board, including for Hispanics and including for black workers, including for middle-class workers, no matter what color you are, no matter what race you are? Why do you think wages have increased? In large part because the border was shut down. Because when you have a constant surge of immigrants coming in who are illegal, right? So hundreds of thousands and then millions of illegal immigrants. What do you think that does to wages? It drives them down. It drives them down. And so why do you suppose so many people haven't been able to get ahead? And why do you think that, you know, you have the Democrats trying to artificially put these minimum wage laws? This is the same party, the Democrat Party, that wants open borders. And then those open borders are causing wages to go down, and the Democrats are saying, no, we want to control those wages. We want to pull them back up here. The Republican Party is saying, no, we want legal immigration. We want to shut down the illegal immigration. And as a result of Donald Trump doing that now for 4 years, guess what's happened? Wages have increased. The economy has grown, wages have increased, and Hispanics have overwhelmingly voted for, more than ever, Republicans. Let me just clarify that. Not overwhelmingly, but they're increasingly voting for Republicans. But certainly evangelical Hispanics are voting Republican. And that has definitely happened in the state of Texas. It's happened in the state of Florida. And increasingly it's happening in other spots across the country. And Barack Obama is just terrified of this. And so he has to do what he always does best, which is to try to race bait and to try to divide people by race, by creed, you know, by nationality. I mean, it's just the same old, tired stuff. And I know you're tired of it too. So next up, podcast listeners, California prisoners get free money. So let's say that again. California prisoners get free money. So if you're in prison in California, you're getting checks. How? Guess how? Well, the California prisoners, thousands and thousands of them, have received unemployment checks. Unemployment checks. How have they done that? Because the California inmates have filed unemployment claims. So let me get this straight. You're in prison. You aren't working because by definition you're in a cell, so you can't work. And you decide, you know what? I'm going to file an unemployment claim. So you file an unemployment claim against the state of California, and then they send you a check. So here's ABC News 7 in the San Francisco Bay Area talking about this very issue. We have a clip on that, and here it is.
$1 billion worth of unemployment benefits now in the pockets of tens of thousands of inmates across the state. To give you an idea of the type of criminals cashing in, Scott Peterson was one of the names used.
It involves rapists and child molesters, human traffickers, and other violent criminals in our state prisons.
From March to August, 35,000 claims have been filed in the name of California state prison inmates. This includes 133 inmates currently on death row. To put it in perspective, 20,000 of those claims have been paid since August, amounting to $140 million.
So can you imagine? So actually the number apparently is closer to a couple of $1 billion. That's at least what the state of California thinks. That is the amount of money that they have sent to people in prison. $2 billion in the form of unemployment checks. You know, people that can't work, they're getting unemployment checks, and they're in prison. So even Scott Peterson. So remember Scott Peterson? Scott Peterson, if you don't recall, he's the convicted murderer who is currently incarcerated in San Quentin State Prison. In 2004, Scott Peterson was convicted of first-degree murder of his pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson, and second-degree murder of their unborn son, Connor, in Modesto, California. Even Scott Peterson received an unemployment check, a convicted murderer who not just killed his wife, but his pregnant wife, and then threw her, I think, in a body of water or something like that. I'm not really sure. I don't recall. But he got a check as well. So if that isn't bad enough in California, even death row inmates receive unemployment benefits. So even when you're on death row in California, you figure, why not? I'm going to apply for unemployment. And they received checks from the state as well. Here's Stephen Wagstaff of the San Mateo District Attorney's Office talking about this very issue. We have that clip, and here it is.
The San Mateo County DA's office was one of the first to uncover this fraud scheme in California, where 21 inmates, including these 8 at a Redwood City Correctional Facility, were charged for defrauding the state out of $250,000 worth of unemployment benefits.
We figured, it's probably in some other county jails too. But to find out that it's a theft of hundreds of millions going throughout our state prison, going to death row even, that has to stop that.
Can you believe that? So these are guys on death row, and you saw the picture of them. If you're listening, of course you heard it, but if you're watching the video of this podcast, you can see the convicted murderers. Between them, they got $250,000 of unemployment benefits. And these benefits, by the way, are paid into by companies in California. And the companies pay this unemployment insurance premium to the state of California on probably a monthly basis. And when they do, and sometimes it's a quarterly basis, and they do so as to have a fund that is flush with cash when there is just such an emergency, such as a large recession or a pandemic. But apparently there were no checks and balances in place in the state of California to stop these inmates from getting unemployment checks. So we have Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. She explains the problem and how this all happened in California, the mix-up which has caused all of these prisoners to get this free money. Notice that at the end of this clip, State Senator Scott Wiener gives his solution. Scott Wiener is a state senator from the San Francisco area. We'll talk about him in a minute. So we have that clip, and here it is.
Right now, there is no cross-matching between the incarceration data and EDD on a routine basis like it's being done in 35 other states.
An issue 9 district attorneys across the state voiced in a letter to the governor requesting help on the urgent matter. State Senator Scott Wiener agrees it must be a priority.
We need to take a look at why we're not cross-referencing. If there's a statute that prevents them from cross-referencing, clearly that has to be changed.
So the state district attorneys of the various counties have written a letter to the governor explaining, that the left hand has to talk to the right hand. In order for that to work, basically, that's the only way you're going to stop prisoners from getting checks. So State Senator Scott Wiener wants to present his way of fixing it. This is the same state senator in California that put forward a bill that ended up passing that allows adult men to have sex with minors. Let me say that again. Scott Wiener, the guy that you just saw, he apparently is like the go-to guy for the media there when they're like, oh, let's have Scott Wiener solve it. I mean, after all, he's the one that wants to legalize adult men having sex with children. I mean, what is happening in California? So that's California prisoners get free money. So next up, podcast listeners, we have Go Woke or Go Broke. That's right, we have Go Woke or Go Broke. So you won't believe this, but an Airbnb executive resigned last year over a Chinese request for data sharing. So let's say that again. An Airbnb executive requested data sharing, was requested data sharing by the Chinese government, and the executive decided to resign because he's like, I'm not giving the Chinese, data. Didn't matter because one of the co-founders of Airbnb disagrees and believes that he and Airbnb should be giving this data to the Chinese government. So what data would that be? So Airbnb is an online platform where you can go and you can rent a house. So someone has a house to rent or a condo to rent or something to rent. Usually it's a place to stay. You go on the platform, you rent it, and it's peer-to-peer, right? So you're renting it from some guy that owns a house in, let's say, Beijing. Or some guy in Beijing wants to rent a house from you because you live in, I don't know, California. So you can rent from each other, and the platform takes a fee from the rental, and that's how the platform makes its money. Well, naturally, if you're in the United States and you're traveling to Asia, the Chinese government wants this information. Why? Because they want to know who's staying where, in what house they're staying, and who are these people. So they can surveil them. Let's just say you're traveling for whatever reason. You could be traveling for business. You could be a top executive or, I don't know, a scientist, and you're traveling to China, and they want to eavesdrop on your conversations because they have the data from Airbnb of who's actually using their platform and coming to their country. Not to mention vice versa, right? You could also say, well, what about the Chinese citizens coming to America and renting someone's house? I mean, why wouldn't the Chinese embassy in the United States use the same data that Airbnb was sharing with them in order to be able to eavesdrop on these people while they were here in the United States? So, Airbnb, here's the Wall Street Journal article. It says, Airbnb executive resigned last year over Chinese requests for more data sharing. And it goes on to say, when it filed to go public this week, Airbnb said that its ability to continue doing business in China is a risk factor for its brand and profitability. Operating in the country has sparked debate among the home-sharing startups' senior leadership for some time, leading a top executive to depart abruptly last year, according to people familiar with the company. Airbnb hired Sean Joyce, a former deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in May of 2019 as its first chief trust officer. Boy, what a euphemism. A role that entailed protecting users' safety on the platform. He resigned 6 months later over concerns about how the massive rental platform shares data on millions of its users with Chinese authorities, the people said. So Airbnb co-founder, when he was asked, the co-founder of Airbnb, Nathan Blecharczyk, I think I got his name right. So Nathan Blecharczyk, he's the co-founder of Airbnb. He was asked that very question. Well, what about the data sharing? I mean, is that right? Should you really be sharing the data with the Chinese government? Here is what the co-founder of Airbnb said. He said, We're not here to promote American values. He said that. We're not here to promote American values. Can you imagine? I mean, this is an American company who's profited enormously from the American people. He's going to use the American banking system to be able to go public because they just filed to go public. And he's saying, just because we're using the American system and just because we are an American company and just because I'm American doesn't mean that I'm going to promote American values when I'm overseas. And that is the classic, right? That is the classic dilemma of so many of these companies. Why it's a dilemma, I have no idea. It's like, they immediately go woke as soon as they go overseas. They go woke because it's like, well, we know it's a communist country. We know it's a surveillance state if there ever were one, but we're okay with that because we just are going to make money, and that's really all that we care about. And the fact that it's communist doesn't really matter because we're just going to share that information. So, case in point, also in the Wall Street Journal, China's detention of an entrepreneur raises fresh concerns about vulnerability of private firms. So, authorities have taken control of Sun Dawu's businesses after his company and employees clashed with a state-backed rival. So increasingly in China, what's happening is the state-owned enterprises, the enterprises that are owned by the Chinese government, are, by the direction of Premier Xi, trying to compete with the private sector, such as it is in China. And if the private sector doesn't basically get on their knees and beg to stay in business, and if they decide to compete instead, they are thrown out of their businesses and they get a low social credit score, and in some cases, they are even denied their businesses and their way of making a living altogether. And so Airbnb, that's a Chinese company. Airbnb is an American company, and they're like, oh, we're okay with that. We're okay with that because, we want to do business in China, and that's the most important thing. We're okay with collecting this data, and we're okay with sharing it with you, the Chinese government, because we don't care if it results in American citizens having their rights infringed, and we don't care if American citizens, even get arrested by you when they're traveling in your country, or when maybe they could even be imprisoned by the Chinese government. This is so dangerous. This is so dangerous. And shame on Airbnb. And I just want to read this quote one more time of what one of the founders of Airbnb said. He said, "We're not here to promote American values." And that is from Mr. Blicharczyk of Airbnb. And that is Go Woke or Go Broke. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining the Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.